Hi, I'm Emily Cunningham. Crash course, 5-minute breastfeeding class. Here we go. These are the essentials to get you started. If you don't have time to take a breastfeeding class, if you're on your way to the hospital and you have 5 minutes between contractions, this is the time to do it. Okay, these following guidelines are evidence-based. Nothing that comes out of my mouth is not evidence-based unless I clearly articulate that and say, this is like somebody told me, or, but I will be straight up with you. Everything else is research-based. You're gonna have challenges. You just will. 92% of women have a concern within the first 3 days. It's gonna happen. But if you do these things that I recommend and that are clearly recommended in evidence, you're gonna have an easier go of it. I can guarantee that. Step 1, your baby was born. Congratulations. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. I love it. What often happens in many hospitals is you'll have 5 minutes, baby's immediately placed on your chest, assuming medically everything's okay with mom and baby. Oh my God, yay! And okay, time for the weight check and routine procedures and antibacterial eye ointment, vitamin K shot, What's baby thinking during all this? Well, he's getting stressed out and he's like, what? None of this smells familiar, where is my mother? And that's enough time. Even 5 minutes off of your chest is enough time to put him in a state of stress, and we disrupt the hunger and the natural inclination for him to root and latch well. But when baby is placed on the chest immediately and left there uninterrupted, what happens? He goes through 9 stages of awakening, including a cry, a doze, some sniffing, and eventually, boop, 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 his head bobs around and he'll very clearly tell you, okay, I'm ready to latch. And that's exactly what will happen. So what's the takeaway here? Immediate, uninterrupted, skin to skin. You need to say those 2 words. Your hospital should be familiar with these. I guarantee other mothers that are walking in there saying those 2 words are getting it. You need to as well. My second recommendation, your baby's not filthy after birth. They're gonna dry him off. He won't be goopy or slimy, but he's coated in your amniotic fluid and he orients with smell. That's his strongest sense right after he's born. So when he's doing that exploration for that first latch like I described, he kind of sniffs his hand, sniffs his chest, and he's rooting around and drifting towards the nipple. He smells his way there. Of course, the nipple's really dark, so that helps too. Bottom line, what's the rush? Don't bathe your baby before that first feed. And then I would say, what's the hurry thereafter? He's also coated with all your good bacteria, and that has benefits. And so we don't want to risk getting him cold either. Sorry, I have 3 sons. That's why I always use the pronoun he. So easy peasy. Have you ever held a baby and all of a sudden he turned and looked for a breast and you're like, nothing there, pal? That's a feeding cue. And so you're gonna get really good at interpreting your baby's feeding cues. Is he roots for his fist? Do you want me to keep imitating a baby, a newborn? I will. He's rooting around in the air. That's his sign saying, I'm ready to latch. It's a lot easier to latch babies when they're showing feeding cues. Mothers who feed based on those feeding cues, they get more feeds in, i.e. they make more milk and they have an easier go of breastfeeding. Remember, your body's saying, okay, how much milk do you want me to make? What do you want me to do here? And so women who are following those feeding cues are making more milk. That's the goal here. Follow your baby's feeding cues. He's gonna show them often. That's a good thing. You're putting your milk order in. The exception is if they're sleepy during the hospital setting, which is frequent in those first couple of days. And so don't wait longer than 3 hours. Remember, your body's expecting an interval between feeds and saying, you know what? Now we're going on 4 or 5 hours. She's not really using this milk. We're gonna start dismantling this milk factory that we were anticipating. So frequent feeding on cue. This probably looks really different than your nipple, right? The shape, it's a much obvious target for a newborn who's just learning to feed. Hold off on pacifiers. Another thing, you can't tell when I'm showing feeding cues if I have a pacifier in my mouth. We know that there are fewer feeds when newborns are given pacifiers. They're not inherently evil. I just want you to use them very sparingly in those initial days, the first 2 weeks. Maybe you're having a really easy go of it at day 10 and you're like, this is easy, oh my gosh. Not likely, but what if? If you want to start using a pacifier, great. I defer to you. You're the expert on you and your baby. We know that breastfeeding goes better when you hold off on pacifiers. Here's something else that's different than a nipple. Much more obvious target, but the most important thing is it comes out really fast. So this is really hard for you to compete with at the breast. Baby that's feeding at the breast has to use his whole jaw, and it comes out much slower than the gravity-induced bottle. And so what do you think? Well, you watch your baby suck down that bottle and you think, oh my God, I've been starving him. And that's not the case. Hold off on bottles for the first couple of weeks. Again, once you've ironed out any other issues, if you're like, okay, I think we can introduce a bottle here, great. If you need to supplement, this is my favorite tool, a plastic spoon. Ask for one at the hospital, as well as lots of feeding syringes. Remember, a feed might be as small as a teaspoon. There we go, we filled up the teaspoon, we pull it up in the syringe, baby is fed. We can avoid a bottle that way. Your baby's learning how to breastfeed, and so bottles can interfere with that. But more importantly, they can interfere with your confidence. Make no mistake, breastfeeding is a confidence game. Formula is tricky because it undermines your breastfeeding success. We know that you are less likely to go as long as you wanted when you supplement with formula early. And remember, all those benefits from breastfeeding are dose responsive, meaning the longer you breastfeed, the more benefits you get. The thing about formula is it's often used out of insecurity. And I know this better than anybody because my first baby was the little formula baby, and my favorite phrase was, I'm gonna just top him off. There was this feeling of like he would sleep more soundly and I could space out feedings better. I didn't know anything about breastfeeding. I had very little support, and the whole process was a disaster. Maybe I'm working that out right now with this video. Remember, formula has a place and time. So if there's a medical reason that your doctor is recommending formula use, first of all, I want you to think of that as medicine. You have the right to ask your pediatrician or your physician why. Say, can you explain to me the rationale for the formula use, and can we bring in a lactation professional? The goal is to fix what's going on with breastfeeding and not replace it. Okay, so to recap, skin to skin, delay the bath, feed on cue, hold off on pacifiers, hold off on bottles, avoid non-medical use of formula, and the most important one, call for help. Women who pick up the phone, who seek out assistance, they breastfeed longer. And that's because, remember, everybody's gonna have challenges, and it's those that seek help. Breastfeeding is a communal activity. We know this because in places where breastfeeding rates are nearly 100%, it's because mom's breastfed, aunt's breastfed, grandma's breastfed, it's everywhere. And so there's this community of culture of support that oftentimes we don't have in today's times. You can do this. All those things on this list are just a matter of you picking up the phone, saying the words, prioritizing those frequent feeds. Review that list. Those are doable things. And doesn't that feel better? Eliminating some of the like, I hope it works out, versus, oh, okay, I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can do all those steps. You still may have challenges, but you will have an easier go if you start off with these steps. I like to-do lists because it's finite, it's black and white, that's something I can control. This list are things I can control. You will have hiccups, you will have times where baby doesn't want to latch or won't latch, or you're doubtful about your supply. Those are going to happen, but they are less severe or less likely to happen if you start off with these steps. Thanks for joining me today, and on behalf of your baby, thanks for getting educated as quickly as possible.